A few years ago, I got a phone call I will never forget. On the other end of the line was someone I love deeply. And she said 4 words that told me her entire life was about to change. I am going to choose me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't even loud. It was truth spoken with a kind of clarity that only arrives when your insides refuse to let you keep living the old story. Today, you're going to hear the journey behind that moment. The quiet buildup, the cracks beneath the surface, the collision of life and identity that made those words unavoidable. And I'm naming something here at the top because integrity matters in this space. Jordan is my niece, and her mother, the one whose story we'll talk about, was my sister. You'll hear echoes of our shared history at different points, but what you'll hear even more loudly is this: 2 women, 2 generations, 2 different paths, confronting the same truth about what it means to be successfully stuck. This episode is not about struggle. It's about clarity. It's about choosing yourself before certainty. And it's about what becomes possible when you finally name what's happening inside of you. So Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to chat today.
All right. So this will be a different conversation from us, but I want to start at the beginning, long before I got that phone call, in the version of your life where everything made sense on paper. You spent your corporate career building in a company where there were billion-dollar brand portfolios, and not any typical enterprise. It wasn't a Fortune 100 or a Fortune 50. It was, as I learned last week, a Fortune 1 Walmart. 20 brands, $14 billion in revenue. Get that right. Multiple customer segments, different swim lanes, and it wasn't just optimizing one brand. You were orchestrating how brands fit together. And that is a strategic lens that most people never touch. And while all of that was happening, there was another story unfolding behind the scenes, a story that would eventually force you to confront whether the life you were living was really yours. So can you take us into that season during that time?
Yeah, it's interesting as we're talking about Fortune 1 and climbing that ladder, because I'm a hyperachiever. Mm-hmm. And of course, I found the biggest corporate ladder you can find, right? Like I found the way of achieving and finding those rungs of the ladder by continuing to climb. So I was with Walmart for 9 years. And I think one of the things that I learned in the corporate world was you're very much trained to be thinking about career pathing and what your next move is and what that continued trajectory is. And you get that validation with every award or promotion or new job. But I started looking around and realizing that the people above me, the leadership, especially the moms that were leaders, weren't living a life that I really wanted anymore, right? They were working hours that I didn't want. And that was a hard realization to figure out in this world that I had built of feeling like I have achieved and been in a really good place to realize I don't know where I'm going anymore.
Yes. And I think that's the thing is we're told this story, like this is what you have to do to be successful. And so you look around and you're like, okay, this is it. But when you have that feeling in your heart of maybe something else, and, you know, as you did this, I watched the pressure building. You had 2 children, leadership expectations. You were being pulled between being a mother, a wife, a daughter. You had your leadership position and this invisible standard so many women carry, which is be everything to everyone and don't let any of the balls drop. But underneath that, something deeper was shifting. The part that came from your mom's story, my sister, your mom was a woman who did everything right. She climbed the corporate ladder, created financial stability, built a retirement full of travel and adventure. I know she was so excited about that. She had every reason to believe she would get to enjoy it. But a couple of years into retirement, she received a terminal diagnosis. And that day changed the air around all of us. So tell us, how did this shift, the diagnosis shift everything for you?
Yeah, I think I had been following this path in life, right? Checking all the boxes of what you were supposed to do. I like to say I had the girl, the boy, and the golden retriever. Like I had this picture of a dream life, and I kind of got to the end of those check boxes, right? And so I
Mhm.
looked around and started questioning, what do I do? And when my mom was diagnosed with cancer and was told that retirement life that she had planned so much for, working towards her whole life, was taken away instantly. That someday vision of what she had
Mhm.
been dreaming of was just gone. Um, and it was an eye-opening experience, not like in that instant, but it, like you said, it was just the building pressure of understanding what that actually meant for her, and
Mhm.
then turned internally to, okay, now that I have this perspective of seeing that she walked through this corporate career, what do I take from that, right? Like, how do I change how I live my life knowing what she did?
Mhm.
And I think this is where millennials are looking at the status quo differently, right? I think, growing up, I had friends whose moms were stay-at-home moms or working moms, but there wasn't this in between of
Mhm.
redefining what working mom looks like, doing both, right? There wasn't this gray space in between. Um, so when my mom was diagnosed, I actually had this trifecta of events that was basically like, you have to do something different, right? So my mom was diagnosed with cancer. My daughter was starting kindergarten. And even though she had been in daycare since she was a baby, there was this huge weight on me of figuring out what I
Mhm.
was going to do with her after school. Like I had the visions of the stay-at-home moms that were baking cookies with their moms, or she was going to go be in an after-school program. And um, it was a huge weight. And then Walmart made the announcement that they were going to shift from hybrid work to being in office all day, every day. And I just decided that the way that the corporate world was going was no longer aligned with how I wanted to
Mhm.
live my life. And it was really that line in the sand of deciding, I can't live this way anymore. This is not how I want to live my life. And even though I was living the dream that I had imagined my entire life, it was really that eye-opening, like, we've got to do something different. We can't end this way, right? Like I just saw what my mom went through, and I don't want that journey for me. Um, so
Yeah. And I
very different.
remember watching you navigate that. You had the house, the husband, the career, the two kids, the golden retriever, like you say, right? All of, like, you had this perfect life. And yet there's something inside. And I think when you have these pivotal events, this tension come in, I was wondering even then if this was the moment that life was asking you a different question. And, I just saw that, of realizing, we all saw that your mom had spent this whole life just dedicating herself to the career, and climbing the ladder, and hyper successful, and such a unique individual to empower other people and inspire other people, that we later learned, after her passing, even more than when she was even alive. We just saw the impact of that. But the day came. Your daughter was about ready to start kindergarten. Your mom was in the hardest part of her illness, and you were giving your all at work, because that's what high achieving women do. And then you called me with those words of, I'm choosing me. So you weren't really announcing a plan, you were announcing a truth, right? And this is
Yeah.
the moment in every hero's journey where the character steps across the threshold before they have the map, before they have the certainty, before they have the guarantees. But there is something else awakening, and I don't know if you realize it, that you are a fourth generation entrepreneur. There
Mm-hmm.
was my grandfather who had a general store, and your grandfather who started several different companies. And then while your mom was climbing the corporate ladder, your dad did work for business for a while, but he really is an entrepreneur as well.
Yes.
So here you are, fourth generation. It's like this lineage waking up inside of you.
Yes.
Have you ever thought about that?
Well, it's interesting because I did have like leaving the corporate world, I felt some sense of guilt, right? Like some
Mm-hmm.
sense of like what that leaving stability looked
Yeah.
like. But I did realize that your dad, my mom, your
Yeah.
dad, my grandpa, was in the like the world of pushing the status quo, right? Like he came
Mm-hmm.
from nothing and built a ton of businesses. And I think that my mom was kind of that same way, like growing up in a small town. She was the only one in her grade that got an MBA and was like living this corporate life. And for me, at first, I felt guilty that I wasn't like, I don't know, grateful for what I had, but I was pushing the status quo in what I thought, or I am pushing the status quo and what I think success looks like, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
redefining that corporate ladders aren't the only way to be successful in life.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave me a little bit of encouragement knowing like, well, this is what everyone else before me did. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so. I think when you grow up in an environment where the way you are successful is you buy into a company and you have a job and you have that guaranteed paycheck coming in, right? But what we know today is there is no paycheck that's guaranteed, whether you work for a company or not. That's becoming clearly apparent. But I think, yeah, when you know other people around you have done it and they made it work, but we really kind of romanticize that corporate life. But the reality, is when you leave where you think you're going for the freedom and flexibility is not really everything it's cracked up to be. It's a little bit disorienting. So tell us what those early months were like after you left corporate. What were the things that you experienced?
yeah, I think the journey of entrepreneurship has been so much more self-realization of who the heck am I than I ever thought I would go through. But even in my first job out of college, I worked for a madman agency, right? Like I've only ever worked for giant companies. And so when I went off on my own, I struggled a lot with not having that big name under my
Mhm.
title. Who was I, right?
Mhm.
I was just Jordan. I wasn't Jordan at this giant company. And so I
Mhm.
think when I first started, I was constantly trying to prove myself and prove my worth and my knowledge. So the first couple of clients I had, I went way over the top, digging way too deep for what they needed because I was trying to prove myself, right? And I think I looking back, I was very much in this mentality of building this long-term strategy. And I think I didn't have that startup mentality of like, do what you need to do today to make sales. I was planning for year 3 when I needed to
Mhm.
be, making money right now. And the whole time, I think I was having, I had a 3 and a 5-year-old at home at the time that I was chasing after, and still this like doubt in the back of my head that like anytime my phone rings, I might have to run to the hospital and have my whole day pivoted. So
Mhm.
the early days of being in there was like, I don't envy myself at all. Like it was hard. And I don't think I even realized, when you're in survival mode, just exactly what you're putting yourself through to make it work.
Yeah, and I think this is the part that people don't talk about. The world celebrates this leap, but they don't celebrate this space after the leap where you have to
Yeah.
build an identity from the inside out. Uh, so many people that I work with experience this, Jordan. So they've been with a company and their identity was basically their job description, right? That's the value they brought to the
Uh-huh.
world. And when you don't
Yeah.
have that authority of the company anymore, you have to start building it from yourself. And a lot of times it comes out into overperforming and overgiving and going outside the scope of work to prove that, you were worth what
Yes.
you were being paid. I think there's a lot of that. And I think, that you had the skills, you had the creativity, this really brilliant strategic mind that you have, but that identity had to catch up a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's where I just didn't give myself enough grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like letting myself step into this identity. And I think I just, was head down hustling and trying to try everything, right? Like just put it out there and see what works and take what I can get for a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a humbling experience, especially when you've been able to climb the ranks within your career within a company. But it's about meeting parts of yourself that you didn't have time to meet when you are working for someone else. And so that's why, we always talk about entrepreneurship is as much personal development as it is professional development. But what happened is you started building a business that finally aligned with your life, helping these ambitious women simplify their marketing, clarify their positioning, and build brands that feel very intentional instead of overwhelming. But even with all that clarity, there was something you couldn't see yet. And so that's where our next chapter begins that we're going to talk about today. So once you had this business foundation built, we looked at something that I do that I really pull a lot of information from when helping people with identity. And it's called human design. It isn't a gimmick. We looked at this not as this would be fun to know or a replacement to your identity, but as a way to understand how you are energetically designed to work in your business and in your career. And Jordan, your chart explained so much about why corporate wasn't going to work anymore. And so if I can get your permission maybe to share with our audience some things that I discovered, are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
Yes.
Jordan, you are a manifester. That's only 8% of the population of the world, which is designed to go out and initiate. You're like a spark plug. You initiate, you inform, you take action when you get clarity. But what had happened is you had been spending years in systems that reward you for asking permission instead of leading with impulse. So here you are, this person designed to take action, and you had to follow the rules and fit inside the box and ask permission before you did things. So that might have been some misalignment. Did you feel that when you were working with the company?
I feel like I got really good at playing the role I was supposed to play, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I learned, and even growing up, I learned I was supposed to act a certain way and you would
Mm-hmm.
get rewarded. So I learned how to play the game. I don't think I realized I was misaligned when I was in it, though, as
Mm-hmm.
much as being on the outside, learning more about myself and how I actually adapt.
Yeah. And I think when you get rewards of promotions or recognition, a nice paycheck, like, oh, this is what gets me that. So I'm going to do that. The other thing we learned
Yeah.
about you is your profile is a 2-4, which means your genius emerges through natural gifts and trusted relationships. So you don't necessarily thrive in environments that micromanage your time, or the worst thing I could see for you is somebody that comes in and wants to flatten your creativity. You are one of the most creative people I know. I know that comes naturally, and I know you grew up in a household with a father who is very creative. So have you been able to express that a little bit more in your role now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think creativity comes to light in so many different forms, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think, how you solve a problem is creative.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely have learned how to lean into my creativity more, knowing this spark plug idea, right? When I have these downloads of ideas, I have to capture them because
Mm-hmm.
I am that hermit side as well. So I'll have all these ideas that'll just pour out of me and I need to write them down immediately so that when I do become this hermit side of me that I still have the creative elements that I can work from.
Yeah.
But yes, I think there are very different ways that I've let creativity come to life because I've been taught I am not the designer, but
Yeah.
creatively thinking is how I use creativity to come to life.
Yeah. You're very strategic about how you do that. Yeah. You're really good at how you do that.
Yeah.
The other part of your chart that we discovered is your definition, which is how you make decisions. Okay. So this is your authority, is you are emotionally defined, which there's a good percentage of the population that is, which means that you need time before clarity, not necessarily making instant decisions. And you've got something called individual circuitry, which means you're meant to bring new ideas into the world, not defend old ones. And so when you started seeing all of this together, I'd love to know what you realized when you saw all this information that we uncovered in your chart. Like, how has it made you more aware, and maybe how does it inform how you are operating in your business?
Yeah, I think it's really validated so much of why I am the way I am, right? I mean, you knowing me saw it and you're like, this makes so much sense, right? But I think there is some aspect of just having that validation of knowing I am the way I am, not by choice, but like it's part, it's something I can't control, right? It's who I am. I think one of the most interesting things that came out was like my environment is the shore, right? I'm this bridge between two worlds, land and sea. And I've always thought that way of marketing being this bridge between of creatives and business. And so seeing it like, yes, that is me. That is how I think about how I approach marketing in general, is this world of bringing creativity to life in a strategic way and in a way that can build a business. So I very much learned to adapt in this world of my own business of how to lean into the 2-4 having these waves of creativity and needing downtime. So like I said, like I'll write down the ideas, and then when my brain is just not working, then I flip to execution mode and I just do something that I can execute and not like have my brain need to be on. And so I've shifted the way that I've approached things in my own business, but I've also shifted how I work with clients, right? I am a idea generator. I'm not intended to, maintain this sustained execution support. And so I think when I started my business, someone asked me if I would work on their social media for them. And I said, sure, I can do that. But I've learned now that that's not meant for me, right? I am very much strategy. I'll give you the ideas, but then you need to take the wheel. And so I've adjusted how I position myself and the offers that I put out there based on, my zone of genius and what my human design has led me to.
Yeah. And that's the thing I see when working with people and people understand their human design. I know for me, when I started really becoming aware and seeing it in action, not just knowing what it is, but integrating it and embodying it, like you see where it comes into fruition, and it gives you permission when something doesn't feel right, like you're like, oh, this is why, because I wasn't designed to do it this way. And so what I heard in you is really having the confidence to say an affirmation, this is who I am. This is who I am. And I don't have to fit in that box because I wasn't designed that way. Yeah,
exactly.
I think so.
Yes. It's 100% confidence and reassurance of what I'm doing, and just that additional validation that I'm on the right path.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. And so you had already done all this brand strategy work and brought this in. And so you're able to design some things in a more strategic way. And so this is the part I want listeners to hear. When your identity and your strategy finally match, your business stops feeling like it's pushing a boulder uphill. And so there's a lot of freedom in that, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the tables turned a little bit, because then I ask you, because I know you have brilliance that I don't, I ask you to help me see what I couldn't see in my own work. So, here's Jordan. She's worked with the Fortune 1, right? She's seen a lot of brands of how they all come together. But what I know so clearly is we can't see in our own business what other people can see. And so I invited her in to bring her strategic eyes to my brand, the swim lanes, the offer structure, the clarity gaps, and the places where clients were getting lost. And you showed me, and this is what I want listeners to understand. Identity clarity isn't enough without strategic clarity. And strategic clarity isn't enough without identity clarity. And so when you put the two together, they are really like rocket fuel. So I would love for you to share with the audience, like, what are some things, because I've been 8 years in business. I've spent a lot of time really moving from copywriting and marketing strategy down to the very root of what people need before they start with their business, that upstream work of identity. What did you discover when you took a look at my brand?
Yeah. Well, I always think it's good to get a different perspective. And because we're both like, in this broader marketing world, when I looked at your business, I wanted to make sure that I was giving you a different perspective than you can see yourself, right? It's like trying to see yourself while you're inside the pickle jar. You can't read the outside. So you already have a strong identity. That is your zone of genius. So when I was looking at your business, I wanted to take my entrepreneur hat of having that broader perspective, right? Of what your identity comes to life as in a strategic offer suite. And I think if you think about the retail world and a brand that sits in Walmart, a lot of brands are thinking with their blinders on. And in the retail environment, you have to think from the customer that's coming in and seeing all of these brands sitting on the shelf together and how they are going to look different for the customer. And so that's kind of the lens that I came into your brand with. Because even though you're a single brand, you've got an offer suite, right? And like many businesses do, you've got multiple products to offer. And so when I looked at your brand from this 10,000 foot view and how the offers lived together, it was really about looking at what the customer experience was going to be and thinking through how they are going to navigate in your offers. Because I think it naturally, as someone is building a business, they're probably working on one offer at a time, and you make it make sense. And this single offer is so strong, but it's really about taking a step back and looking at that bigger picture of how the offers work together. Or even within marketing, you're working on one marketing channel at a time. I really help take my clients through the perspective of how it all works together. And so it tells this cohesive story that is going to bring the customer along across throughout all of the touch points within your business.
Yeah. And I think too, what you really brought out to me is I do have these very strong offers, but for when someone visits my website, and I'm in the process of updating this, so hopefully by the time the episode airs, at least I've got some movement on it. But I had 6 different services right up front, and I know what they are. But I think the thing you made me realize is somebody comes to my website, and how do they know which one is for them? Because, I've got a cute name on it, which, really, let's just tell them what it is. And how do they know if they're ready for it? How do they know what goes in order? And we were even laughing. I commented, it's almost like, Oprah, you get a car and you get a car and you get, like, I was just telling everybody I can do all of this, which,
I do it all.
Is great. And I do offer those services, but the services are not all for the same person. So that really helped me so much of doing that. But Jordan, what I want to do is, you were able to help me in that way. I would like to give you an opportunity to talk about who you like to work with as an ideal client, and maybe what is the problem they have when they come to you and how you're able to help them.
Yeah. So it's interesting going from the largest corporation to my own, I had so many people be like, well, are you going to help businesses that work at Walmart? And I was like, no, that's not what I want to do at all. So I work with small businesses, and I love helping bring their story to life, because there is so much passion that you can pull out of individuals that really have a purpose, a why. And I think as a mom, one of the groups that I love to work with are other moms, right? That are trying to redefine what success looks like and find this balance of work life and, basically saying like, I am going to have it all. I'll have my cake and eat it too. But I love businesses that have really gotten to a point where they've figured things out. And now they're kind of like, okay, if I want to keep building, I need more of a stable support underneath. And I really need to get back to the crux of what my business is intended to do and really find what makes them special. And so I think that's, one of the things that we were talking about is I work a lot with clients who are doing the things that they think they're supposed to, but they are muting down parts of themselves that really makes them special, right? And so it's pulling out what their genius is and how that comes to life in a way that the customer can understand. We were talking about the word authenticity and this buzzword that everyone's talking about because of the antithesis to AI. And now I think more than ever, people really need to lean into who they are and why they're different, and pulling that out of them, which can feel really vulnerable, right? Being authentic is, even more than just showing up as putting yourself out there. Showing the underside of you is hard.
Yeah. And I think that's where knowing who you are and human design coming in, right? But I also think, like, why are we that way? If you think about, like, in middle school is where you start trying to be like everybody else and trying to fit in. And the whole story that we live, right? Like, you go to school and you find a partner and get a house. And, you did all of those things where we try to be like everybody else. And then all of a sudden, we have permission to be ourselves, and we haven't been that way for decades, right? And so,
yes.
Yeah. So you have something that I really love that you've leaned into called the brand edge. Tell us a little bit about what that is and how that works.
Yeah. So the Brand Edge is my new program that I just launched this week. I guess it'll be next week. But anyway, and it is really about leaning into who you are and figuring out your positioning. So it's taking those silo blinder off and looking at the cultural context, the competitive context, and really understanding why you win and you can solve your customer's problem better than anyone else. And I think that is something that is missing with small businesses, is that confidence of why you win, right? I think everyone kind of understands their perspective and why they're bringing something to their customer. But I think what, working at Walmart taught me is they know their competitive set more than anyone else, right? Like, the girl that is buying girls' dresses knows exactly what the Target dresses look like and why the Walmart one is better, because it has pockets. And that is what I think small businesses are missing, is what is their right to win. And it is that competitive edge that businesses are needing to lean more into, to differentiate themselves, but to also help meet the customer where they are by knowing what they're going through and giving them the needs before they even anticipate it. So it's a new intensive program. It's 4 weeks, and it's really about figuring out your edge and then bringing it to life within your marketing, within your offer suite, and being able to lean into your positioning that makes you untouchable.
Yes, and I think that's a thing a lot of people miss out on. And I never thought about it until we were talking last week about, knowing your example of Walmart, of knowing that this one product and how the other competition that same product might be different. And I think from an entrepreneur perspective, if somebody else is doing what I do, first, finding them might be hard for me to do. But second, knowing how they do it, knowing the specifics of their program, like all of those things, we don't ever take the time to do that. And so to your point, your program, what I think is so brilliant about it is what makes each one of us different is our experiences and what it took us to get there, right? So that's why I love this whole idea of, the authenticity piece that you have. And for those of you that are on social media, if you are not on Instagram, Jordan, your account there is called Purple Sky Strategy. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. And it is so much fun to watch you on that because, some of the things that you do, like, as you share an idea, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been there. I relate to that. You're talking a lot to moms who are trying to manage it all, right? And you even have something, I think it's a Tuesday afternoon. I almost see it like a time for freedom. Tell us about your Tuesday afternoons. What is it that you prioritize there?
Yes. My random Tuesday rule is something that came out of someone once asked me, and this was when I was in the crux of figuring out what the heck I'm doing with my life, right? Mm-hmm. Someone asked me for the first time how I wanted to spend a random Tuesday. And I couldn't answer it, right? Because I had only my entire life thought, well, I will go to work and then I will pick the kids up and then I will make dinner. And that's Tuesday. And so this random Tuesday rule is really about thinking about life, not just where you want to be in 5 years or deferring joy until the weekend or vacation or a someday retirement, but it's about living in the now. And so my random Tuesday rule, it doesn't have to be a Tuesday, but it's catchy that way. So my Tuesday rule is to do something different, to take yourself out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. I take my kids to the pet shelter and we go pet cats, or we go to the park, or we go to the library, but it's about infusing joy in the everyday and not deferring joy until this someday that we're all waiting for. But it's about living life now and taking advantage of the life that we have now.
And even though your mom is not on this physical plane any longer, I know that she is hearing you and smiling, because that's what her whole time in her life she was saving and working towards, to be able to experience that joy. And I know she saw joy in you as you were navigating your career and then motherhood, and I know to be able to experience her grandchildren. So I just want to call that out. Every time I see that Tuesday, random Tuesday, I just smile, because I know that is something that would just make her happy. It makes me happy just to see. So what it really pulls into me, everything we've talked about here today, Jordan, is this is why your story matters. You show people that you can be successful and still be misaligned. You can have the resume and still feel lost. You can crave both ambition and presence. You can choose yourself before you know the next step. And that's what you had to do. You can leave without having the whole map. And you can rebuild a business that works for real life with carpool lanes, spirit weeks, reading logs, all of those things. And you can find clarity even after life breaks you open. So for the person listening right now, the one who feels that quiet ache, the one who knows something needs to change but hasn't said it out loud yet, what is it that you, Jordan, would like to tell them?
Yeah, I think it's that you are in charge of your own life, right? You don't have to follow the rules. And even when you build what you think is a dream life, it might not be your dream life. You don't have to build a dream life for someone else, right? And redefining what success looks like is on your terms, and you don't have to get approval from anyone about it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that we forget, is we have permission to choose. And I think you did that, and you're living it every day. So If you are listening and thinking, this is me, I'm in that in-between space, I am successfully stuck, here's your next steps. If you need strategic clarity, if you need someone who can see the swim lanes, to name your difference in a way that you can't, Jordan's Clarity Intensives and her Brand Edge program that she has, that's where to start. But if you need identity clarity before that strategy can land, if you need language for what's happening inside of you, I have the Clarity Path, or the Next Direction would be your right beginning. Both doors lead to clarity. Both paths help you stop circling the same questions, and both will give you the next step. It's just which one that you're leaning towards first. So Jordan, your courage didn't start the day that you chose yourself. It really started years before, in the moments you whispered truth to yourself before you were ready to say it out loud. So thank you for bringing your story, your heart, your clarity, and your voice into the space for people who need to hear it. You're not lost. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're just standing at the threshold if you're listening to this and this is resonating with you. And once you name what's happening inside of you, everything starts to shift. So thanks for being with Jordan and I today. I'll see you here next week.